Chinese military jets are patrolling Taiwan on an unprecedented scale. This, according to the island's Air Force. On Tuesday, an official report from Taiwan outlined air activity inside the island's Southwestern Air Defense Identification Zone, called the ADIZ. The information shows that China's Air Force flew almost 30 military jets into Taiwan's airspace. Some even flew from the southwestern zone to southeastern ADIZ zone before turning around. This marks the largest jet fleet to enter Taiwan since last September. That's when the Taiwanese military first released reports about Chinese military jet activity in its air defense zone. Data released says the latest fleet involved 2 slow military aircraft alongside fighter jets and bombers. But in past flyovers, China's military only sent out its Y-8. It's an anti-submarine aircraft mainly used for maritime patrol and general transport. Taiwan's Defense Department responded quickly, sending out air patrol forces, radio warnings, and air defense missiles. A U.S. aircraft carrier group has entered the South China Sea as part of a routine mission, the U.S. Navy said on Tuesday. Supercarrier USS Ronald Reagan leads the group. This is the carrier group's first time in the South China Sea this year. The U.S. Navy said while in the South China Sea, the strike group is conducting maritime security operations, which include flight operations with fixed and rotatory wing aircraft, maritime strike exercises, and coordinated tactical training between surface and air units. They added that carrier operations in the South China Sea are part of the U.S. Navy's routine presence in the Indo-Pacific. The Navy statement also said the move is to uphold U.S. alliances with regional allies and to demonstrate U.S. Navy's ability to quickly respond to any contingency across the region. U.S. warships have passed through the South China Sea more frequently in recent years. This as the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is building more artificial islands and air bases in the area. The U.S.'s move is likely a show of force against Beijing's unlawful territorial claims there. The U.S. is removing an almost decade-long range limit on South Korea's ballistic missiles. This means the country can now build missiles that can reach a number of cities in North China, including Beijing. This comes amid the Chinese regime's expansion of its nuclear capabilities, and after the U.S. reinforced its alliance with South Korea in a meeting last month. So far, Beijing has not protested against the move. From now on, South Korea can build missiles without any limits on range, up from a previous 500-mile cap. Having more well-armed allies could prove to be useful for the U.S., particularly as chatter of military conflict increased recently. The U.S. had such range limits on South Korea since 1979. At the time, the limit was around 110 miles. In 2001, the U.S. increased the cap to about 185 miles and upped it again in 2012 to 500 miles. Even with the freedom to build missiles, South Korea is unlikely to make nuclear ones. That's because the country has signed onto the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It's an international treaty that limits nuclear armament. The Australian military is going to spend over $170 million to help Papua New Guinea upgrade its naval base. The head of the Papua New Guinea military says the investment is in response to China's growing presence in the region. And the upgrade will significantly improve the country's maritime security capabilities. An Australian company has been awarded the contract, and the project will also involve members of the U.S. Navy. Construction was due to begin this month, but the CCP virus pandemic delayed it. And about 20 U.S. Navy engineers have also been evacuated from the construction base for the same reason. The project will also include improvements to local roads, power grids, and training facilities. When the works are done, Papua New Guinea will double the number of troops on that island to 400. And Australian troops will also be able to use the base for joint exercises and monitoring programs. U.S. Congressman Chip Roy from Texas introduced a bill last Friday that would ban members of the Chinese Communist Party from owning land in the U.S. Roy says this bill would ensure Texas land will never come under the control of the CCP. In a statement, the congressman warns that the CCP's quest for global domination and their direct investment in the U.S. economy pose a major threat to Americans' way of life. Data shows that 30 million acres of U.S. farmland is owned and controlled by foreign investors. A China watcher is warning about a recently proposed Chinese wind farm project next to a major military base in Texas. He tells the Epoch Times American thought leaders that the project poses national security risks and hidden hazard.
When American hedge fund manager and China watcher Kyle Bass flew to a Chinese-owned wind farm in Texas, the Chinese staff that received him there appears frightened. The Chinese worker welcomed Bass to a car at the landing strip, but something unexpected happened.
And he casually pointed across the front of the cab and pointed at the gate and said, that's where the Chinese headquarters in Texas happens to be. And I said, excuse me?
Bass was shocked, but the Chinese receptionist said it was a joke.
And I said, stop the car. and he said, no. They have cameras everywhere. They'll come after me. And I said, we're in Texas. Stop the car. No one's coming after you here.
The wind farm's strangeness caught Bass's attention. Retired Chinese general and billionaire Sun Guangxin bought over 130,000 acres of land in Texas, including this giant wind farm. But there's not a lot of wind there. Instead, it's sitting right next to a major U.S. Air Force base.
We would never build a wind farm where this one is. And so there's a strategic reason this general has acquired all of this land, and he did it, again, in an insidious way.
Sun is the richest person in China's Xinjiang region, and his company has been buying up land in Texas since 2015.
He got a local businessman out of Lufkin, Texas, to front for him and purchase all the properties. So none of the landowners knew they were selling to a Chinese general.
Sun has a net worth of $1.9 billion and was also the vice chairman of a CCP youth federation in Xinjiang. The proposed wind farm site is just about 30 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. U.S. lawmakers and experts are also raising national security concerns over the project.
My view is that the reason that he bought the wind farm and wants to put up 700-foot turbines is he plugs directly into our electric grid. Well, plugging directly into our electric grid is something that should never happen.
In addition to the Texas power grid failure in January, several cyber attacks have targeted America's critical infrastructure in recent months.
We are fully certain that the Chinese and the Russians, the North Koreans and Iranians want to disrupt our critical infrastructure. We are certain that they want to do that and that they have the capacity to do it.
Earlier in April, a U.S. annual threat report found that the Chinese regime's cyber capabilities, at a minimum, can cause localized temporary disruptions to critical infrastructure within the United States. The Texas legislature recently passed a bill banning companies from hostile foreign regimes, including China, from engaging in any critical infrastructure business in the state.